Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Common Law. My name is Attorney Edward Berkman. I'm your host this evening. Here at the Common Law, we like to talk about everyday legal issues, the common law, as you would. And I'm an attorney. I practice out of a law firm in Beverly called DeRogers and Tierney. We also have offices in Boston and Duxbury. Now, although I am an attorney, I'm not your attorney. So please do not take anything that I say here today as legal advice. And that goes for my guest as well. My guest is not an attorney, but again, do not take what he is saying for scripture. When it comes to, cases and law issues, the devil really is in the details. So even though if we're talking about something that sounds very similar to your current situation, trust me, I guarantee you there is some sort of a slight difference, and that slight difference can make all the difference. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my guest. He is a very well-educated accountant. His name is Andrew Malika. Andrew, how are you this evening?
I'm good, Ed. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have you, sir. Thank you. I've known Andrew for a very long time. We are old friends. Andrew, you are an accountant at a general sort of long-term care behavioral health facility?
Yeah, senior living, accounting manager. But I have a background in, various industries within accounting. But
I think for tonight's episode, I think we might want to talk about sort of the business side of long-term care.
Yes.
Does your company deal with long-term care, like a skilled nursing long-term care situation, or is it more of just assisted living, or is it sort of everything?
It's the whole range: assisted living, long-term care, mind and memory care.
Okay, like a memory unit.
All sorts of things. Yeah.
Any behavioral health stuff?
Typically, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. So, I don't know if everybody knows at home. Assisted living can run the gamut. It can run to very independent living to almost round-the-clock care, almost like a nursing home. So there's very subtle situations here. So even though you're hearing something in terms of nursing home or long-term care or assisted living, just know those aren't just boxes we put people in. There are many subtle levels. So just keep that in mind. Again, we're not actually talking about your specific situation. If you do have a question that pops up, my email address, it's on the screen right here. Please write me an email, and I can help you the best I can. I'd be more than happy to help you. And, that goes for applying for Mass Health or, Medicaid or Medicare even. Whatever I can do to help you, I promise I will do my best. Alrighty, so moving on, Andrew.
And just to add to that, a lot of times a resident will start as an assisted living residence and kind of run the gamut all the way.
Okay.
So, one person might experience different levels of care and different circumstances throughout their residency.
Gotcha.
Right.
So I have a subtle background in this as well. I worked for a software company for the better part of 10 years doing long-term care and behavioral health billing. And that was purely on a software side. So I would see all kinds of things from, billing for Medicare, Medicaid services, Medicare Part A, Part B, Part D, the whole donut hole thing. Folks at home, the donut hole thing is basically it's a gap in your Medicare Part D coverage where it covers up to a certain dollar amount, and then you hit like this hole basically, and where it doesn't cover anything, and then it starts picking up again after you've sort of exhausted that whole area. We're not going to get into any of that fine-tuned stuff tonight, but generally speaking, Andrew, what are the things that you see from a business side of assisted living long-term care in terms of what are the most common payers that you're seeing? Is it commercial insurances or is it more government insurances?
There are some residents who receive subsidized payments from state governments, but for the most part it's independently financed.
Okay, so people are, I would call that self-pay.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are the rates still a little bit more for self-pay as opposed to like a Medicare or Medicaid?
It is quite expensive. Yes.
Yeah. So, folks, this is why you kind of need to get an attorney for something like this.
Exactly.
If you're going into one of these facilities, long-term care, assisted living, if you're self-pay, which means you're just paying the cash, you're paying a higher rate than you would have as if you were on a government subsidized insurance program, or even, I would say, even a commercial insurance.
Right.
Like a Blue Cross.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, those insurance companies, they strike deals with the institutions, and they have like a group rate, as opposed to you're just paying the full amount. Now, let's get into a kind of a touchier subject. So we have a patient comes in, and they're self-pay, and they're on a fixed income. Say they, had $100,000 in savings, and how long do you think that would last in one of these kind of, let's not say assisted living, let's just say round the clock nursing home care. How long do you think that $100,000 would last?
Not long.
Yeah, probably not even a year.
Probably not even a year.
That's
no.
crazy.
Yeah.
Think about that, folks. $100,000. It's not even gonna get you a year. So what happens when they've paid through that $100,000 and now they're broke?
So, people move out of assisted living facilities for various reasons. One of which being financial. It could be dissatisfaction. It could be, ultimately death. But financial reasoning is a reason a lot of people move out.
Yeah. So, do you work with people trying to transition from like a self-pay to like a Medicaid program?
No, it's mostly self-pay until.
Okay. So, again, this is why I kind of can't stress enough. You get a lawyer to apply for Mass Health, because what he's saying to you folks is they're not going to help you, right?
Pretty much, right.
So, if you find an attorney, you can sort of have an advocate for you, and that will help with the application process. Now, if they were to, say, spend down their assets and then qualify for like a Mass Health, will you accept that as a payer?
Correct.
Okay. You just don't help them get on Mass Health.
Right.
Okay.
I think the other reason to have an attorney involved when it comes to assisted living is the fact that it's basically a landlord-tenant agreement. And if you don't understand what you're agreeing to in that agreement, an attorney can help you figure that out, before you sign something that you maybe shouldn't be signing.
Yeah. So let's sort of touch on that a little bit. So this would be more for something like an assisted living stay. So you're paying basically rent, and that means you're basically signing a lease.
Right.
Like if you were to rent an apartment,
Correct.
You would sign a lease, and they would, Massachusetts standard lease is about 3 or 4 pages, but I draft leases for people all the time. They could be anywhere from 1 page to 10 pages,
right.
Maybe even more than 10 pages.
And the verbiage can be different depending on the situation.
100%.
Yeah.
And that you would expect verbiage to be different if you were renting in a 2-bedroom apartment as opposed to an apartment in an assisted living facility.
Right.
Again, because there's many subtle levels here.
Exactly.
So we're talking, are they, maybe they're just there and they're completely independent and they're just taking, a shuttle van to the grocery store.
Right.
Or maybe they're having somebody come in and help them clean up the house.
Right.
Or maybe they're having somebody come in and give them the medicine and give them food and, help them go to the bathroom and change their clothes. And again, subtle levels here.
And all of those are different costs,
Yeah.
Getting your hair cut, for example, that's an extra cost. Like you say, depending on the level of need, that's a different cost. So, like care need, I mean.
And I know in nursing homes, like getting your hair cut is not something that. So if you were on Mass Health and you were in a nursing home and you wanted your hair cut, Mass Health doesn't pay for that.
Right.
So basically, when you're on Mass Health, there is a amount you have to pay. It's basically what your income is coming in, and that money goes towards your care. A mass health is picking up the rest of the bill. Now they're entitled to pretty much all of your income, with the exception of a personal needs amount. I believe right now that's right around $80 a month. I don't know the exact figure, don't quote me on that, but it is around $80 a month that you're allowed to have every month. So if you want something like a cell phone or a haircut, that's coming out of that $80 a month. Just think how fast that goes.
Cable.
There's
There's lots of expenses that aren't really considered, when you're signing that rental agreement or that residency agreement.
So that's and if you're a mass health, that you have very little money to pay for these things.
Right.
So that's crazy. So there was a story in the news that basically people were being charged after death for these sort of nursing home or assisted living stays.
Right.
And the gist of it was they died and then they still had to pay maybe up to like
30 days.
30 days of rent.
Because it's a landlord-tenant agreement.
Yeah.
You have to give 30 days notice. I mean, most people don't plan on when they're going to die and say, "Oh, I'm going to die in 30 days."
Yeah.
So it's kind of a hard thing to give notice for, but it's still part of the agreement.
And those institutions, I don't want to sound like it's you sign an agreement. It says that you're willing to pay up 30 days. And even by law, folks, if you don't have, let's say you had a year lease and then that lease is expired, but you're still living there, you've now converted it to becoming a what is known as a tenancy at will. And by law, you have to give 30 days notice before you can leave. So a lot of times, even if they signed an agreement for like a year, or 2 years, or 5 years, and they're still there after that lease is expired, and they don't want to sign a new lease, and they're just there month to month, just by a mechanism of law, they are entitled to charge for 30 days even after you die.
And that's something you might not consider, which is why you would want to have an attorney.
Yeah.
Read through the documents that you're signing.
And it is different because, like, if you're paying rent in an apartment, what you're paying for is the right to stay there. Mm-hmm. But they've baked all these other things into these lease agreements that, you're paying, like we said, $100,000 doesn't even last you a year. You're paying north of $12,000-$15,000 a month in rent.
Right.
And that rent is covering things like your care, even your food, like the cleaning of yourself and the place. Mm-hmm. Like, there's a lot that goes into that, and that's just all wrapped into rent.
Yeah.
And
I think the story you're referencing specifically, the family was on the hook for $15,000 for the 30 days.
Yeah, so that's a month's rent.
Right.
Yeah. So you got to be careful, folks. And even though you give 30, sometimes it could even be longer than 30 days. Mm-hmm. Again, we're talking about that mechanism by law here, that 30-day notice you have to give if you're a tenant at will. You have to give that 30 days in that month. So if you don't do it on like the first of the month, it might be close to 60 days. So today, we're filming this on February the 3rd. If I was going to put in a notice that I would be leaving, then I give my 30-day notice, I'm on the hook for all of February, because it's February 3rd. And I'm also on the hook for all of March. I don't get to leave on March 4th. I have to stay until the end of March. Or, 30 days. I mean, probably like March 28th or something like that. But that's crazy. That's crazy. And again, I'm not trying to beat up on the corporations here or the assisted care facilities. They need to make money. A lot of times people are in these facilities and they're completely indigent. They're on mass health. So, or they're not even on mass health. They're in that limbo state. And they can end up, say you've spent all your money and you haven't applied for mass health. You weren't timely with that. That bill keeps on going up and on that self-pay rate, right? Right. So somebody could owe 50, 60, 70.
Oh, yeah.
100,000.
Easy.
Eat more.
Easy.
So, and then what happens to that money if they die and then that's gone?
If they can't collect it, it gets written off. If it's bad debt.
Yeah. So it just goes poof, gone.
I mean, they'll try to collect. They'll try to, you know, get whatever assets you have.
Yeah. Put a lien on. Maybe you have a house. You put a lien on that.
Right.
Put a lien against their estate to see if there's any money on there.
Right.
And then so folks, not only can they put a lien on your property, they can put a lien on your estate. So if your estate is probated, another good reason to try to avoid probate with a good estate plan. So if you have to go through probate, those liens can be attached right to your estate. You don't even have to own a house anymore. They can go right to your estate. But I guess what Andrew is saying here is, even if you've completely exhausted they've exhausted all the resources, and there's just no way they can get paid their, $80 grand or whatever it is that they're owed from somebody's stay. They just write it off.
Right.
So they're just taking the L on that.
Right.
And I think, folks, that's leading to why this is so expensive for this type of care. Do you think you can be like a ballpark percentage of, number of, cases? Like out of 10 cases, how many do you think get written off? 10 delinquents?
Oh, geez, I don't know.
1 or 2?
Probably, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's...
But it's also going to affect, your credit, your own, credit, I guess.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is, on the side, if we're looking at this from the side of the hospital or the long-term care facility, if 2 out of every 10 people don't pay their bill, and it's up to basically they're not running a charity organization here, so they need to make a profit, which
that
means
attributes to the cost.
So they are going to raise the rates for everybody else. So, I think part of when insurance. I don't know when insurance was invented. I'm not a history person.
Me neither.
But I mean, we're just going to go pure speculation here, folks. I imagine when insurance was conceived, it was, at least health insurance, it was, okay, like, this stuff is getting expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, if we all pay a little, and we all kind of cover all the costs, then, like, it's not that bad.
Right.
So... It's kind of like that in a way where if 2 out of every 10 people aren't paying their bill, well, the other 8 are kind of subsidizing those 2. Again, they have to make a profit. Now, we're talking, these facilities have hundreds, if not thousands of residents. And that's an important thing when you talk about assisted living, patient versus resident.
Right.
Because patients have rights. Residents have rights. Not all those rights are the exact same thing.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that's something to keep in mind. So that's when you're established residency. That's why I think a lot of times these long-term care facilities don't want to let you in until they know you can pay for at least a couple of months.
Oh yeah, there's a whole process. For what your assets are, what you can afford.
They evaluate all that stuff.
Right.
I know, so a lot of times they want you private paying for a couple of months. They at least want to know that we can charge you for that self-pay rate for some time before you eventually go on to Mass Health, which I think most people transition to Mass Health at some point in time if they live long enough.
Probably, yeah.
And so basically in order to qualify for Mass Health, you have to spend down your assets down to $2,000.
Right.
There's some stipulations. If you intend to return home, you can still keep your house and you can keep an automobile. I think but once you're down to under that $2,000, you can apply for Mass Health, and the state would eventually start paying for that care. Now, they can go back 3 months and back bill Mass Health.
I'm not sure about
okay.
that.
I'm almost positive that they can go back 3 months. So to the date of your application. So let's say you're paying self-pay, you're private paying for like a year, and you've run out, you've spent on all your assets, you have nothing left. It's important to apply for Mass Health very timely. So you're on Mass Health But that application process is not. They don't make that easy either.
Right.
There's a whole lot of hoops you got to jump through.
Okay.
So if you've run out of money and you've applied for Mass Health, first of all, this is why it's important to timely set your application, because once you've applied, they cannot evict you.
Oh.
So you cannot be evicted for lack of payment once you have a Mass Health application in or pending. Once you're denied for Mass Health, then yeah, they can go about evicting you.
Okay.
Massachusetts, I'm sure you know, eviction is easier said than done.
Right. It's a landlord state.
Yeah. So
I mean, tenant state. Sorry.
yeah, I know what you meant. So if you applied, say, January 1st, you know, the bill is January, the bill for February, the bill for March, you know, hopefully you're on Mass Health in that 3-month period, and then they can go ahead, the nursing home can back bill for those 3 months. Now, if it takes you 4 months to get on Mass Health, well, all of a sudden now you owe the nursing home an extra month. Now, does that get written off? Does that, you know, we don't really know. This is why the devil's in the detail, folks. I can't tell you what's going to happen because every situation's different. You know, do you have family that pays for it? Although they're not required. You know, is there anything there to do? Do you have a house? So there's a whole bunch of different scenarios there. I think what's interesting with that though is once you owe the nursing home money, again, that's for rent, right? And we've established that they've tied in all these other services in there. You owe an organization, you know, tens to maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars, and that institution is still responsible for your care. Now, ethically, they can't, you know, give you less care. And I'm not even going to insinuate that any organization would dare give less care to somebody that owed them more money. But like, people are people, and things happen, and you know, I'm just saying that I wouldn't want my relative in there in a organization that they owed a great deal of money for, of which I personally know they're just not going to be able to get paid.
Right.
Now, granted, that's probably factored into the bill. They factor into some people not being able to pay the bill, like we've talked about. So, I mean, who knows? Every organization's going to be different like that. So yeah, that's
one thing you mentioned is the word probate and avoiding probate, which is a term I've heard, or a phrase I've heard before. I just don't know exactly what that means or how that's done.
That's a good question. So when you die, if you have a bank account, right? So you die and you have all this money into a bank account, you own a house, house is in your name only. Probate is just the process of a court determining where your stuff should go after you die.
Okay.
So if you have a will, that's a lot easier because then you have kind of outlined where that stuff is going to go. And you've probably already pointed something that's known as a personal representative.
Right.
So basically, it's the person who's going to run your estate for you when you're gone. If you don't have a will, then court would assign somebody, probably a person who's bringing forward that probate action.
Okay.
Now, you don't have to if you die, you don't have to open up a probate. It's just if you want to get access to that property, you would need to open a probate. So, again, your bank account and your house are both in your name only. We'd have to open up a probate to assign a personal representative so you can go to the bank and withdraw that money from the account. So you can, either through power of sale that's in a will or obtaining a license to sell from the land court. Again, whole different circumstances here. Again, that's why every situation is different. You would need to obtain some sort of a mechanism to then sell that property. And so, obviously, you're dead, you can't sign the deed, so your personal representative would, in all likelihood, be signing that deed for you.
Okay.
Again, there's situations where it might not be the personal representative, it might be the heirs. There's a whole bunch of different scenarios on who would sign that deed, but, somebody would need to, and the court would kind of need to figure that out. The great thing about avoiding probate when it comes to these matters is, so even if you're on Mass Health, it's not like a free pass. Once you have passed away, and you're on Mass Health, and they've basically any money that Mass Health has paid for your care for the age of 55 or over, they're entitled to get reimbursed from your estate.
Okay.
And so every time you file a probate, one of the things you have to do is you have to notify the Division of Medical Assistance here in Massachusetts. And if they've basically, it's just this whole organization that just counts who Mass Health has paid money towards, and if they paid money towards your care, if you're from age 55 or over, they're going to want to be reimbursed for that. Now, this is like the situation where it's like the nursing home took my house. Nursing homes can't take your house. If you owe nursing home money, they'll put a lien on the house, force the sale of it. They absolutely can do that.
Right.
Sometimes it also is, it's not the nursing home, it's Mass Health, state of Massachusetts, that's taking your house. So you own property, we run through probate, we notify Division of Medical Assistance, they put a lien onto either your estate or your property or both, and basically they get paid from the proceeds of your estate. Now, if we avoid probate, if you have a good estate plan and you put everything into a trust, when you pass, you don't really own anything. Everything you own is owned by the trust. Bank accounts in the trust name, houses in the trust name, and there's other things that we can do, very little subtle variations of that. But basically, you don't own anything, so you don't have to open up probate. If you don't have to open up probate, Division of Medical Assistance is never notified, and there's really no mechanism for them to do that. Now, Mass Health could open up a probate for you, and or a nursing home could open up a probate on your behalf. Anybody can open up a probate for anybody, and then just try to collect their money that way.
Okay.
Typically, even like creditors aren't owed money for outstanding debts that are old, that have basically they expire a year and a day after you've passed.
Okay.
So
that's what I've heard. Like the typical reason for people wanting to avoid probate is like the time that it takes.
So like I'm married, so if I have a bank account that's in my name only. When I die, I want my wife to be able to go to the bank and get that money out of there, like pay the mortgage. Without that, you have to probate my account, and like all my money just sitting in my account. No one can touch it until we go through the whole probate process.
So the way of avoiding that is just by having a will?
No, you would want everything, and you would want everybody should have a will. First of all,
Yeah.
It just everybody should. There's a million reasons to have a will. It helps with the probate. And it helps maybe even to. You might be able to avoid probate with just a will, but the thing that's really going to help you avoid probate is having all your assets in trust.
Okay.
And there's different kinds of trusts we've talked about here on the common law before, breaking down between revocable or irrevocable, and there's a million different kinds of trusts.
Right.
For the most part, you boil them down to two sort of categories. One that you can change and one you cannot. A lot of people put their house and some assets into what's known as an irrevocable trust. And that protects assets from Mass Health, but only after 5 years. So basically, they're just establishing that because when you put it into an irrevocable trust, you can't change it. You're really not supposed to take it out of the trust after that time. It's almost like you're giving something away before you die. So, and there would be beneficiaries that wouldn't be you.
Okay.
So a lot of times people make their kids the beneficiaries. So you put the house into a trust, kids are the beneficiaries, and then after 5 years, house can't be touched for Mass Health purposes because Mass Health has that 5-year look back period. They just want to make sure you're not giving away your stuff like just to qualify for Mass Health. It has to be like a planned out for thing.
Okay.
And so that's why people do that. You lose a lot of control with that. Like if you were to like put your house into a trust, a revocable trust, you really couldn't refinance that.
Yeah. If something changes, you can't change.
Yeah. Most banks aren't going to let you refi a house that's in an irrevocable trust. That's not to say it's impossible. I have seen it before. It's very unlikely though. But if you're allowed to put it into a living trust, which would be a revocable trust, which means you can change it. Most people's revocable trusts do go irrevocable once they die, which makes sense. You obviously wouldn't want somebody changing your trust after your death. A lot of people, you can put all your end of life wishes right in that trust. Basically, almost the trust acts as a will, almost.
Okay.
Just distribution of all your property.
So is the revocable one not have the 5-year?
It doesn't. There's no look back period. It's because it's still technically you own it.
Okay.
You're still in full control of that asset.
Right.
But the reason why people put things into a revocable trust, a changeable trust, is to avoid probate.
Oh, okay.
And again, if we're avoiding probate, we're avoiding a whole. You can access your funds. All you need is a death certificate. You don't need anything else. And you can. There's a ton of stuff you can do that you don't have to wait for the court to figure it out. Basically,
The time and the money.
time, money. Yeah. So estate plans are expensive. I know. Charging somebody as an attorney for probate, it's like 3 times as much.
Yeah. Yeah, people have like the conception that, getting a lawyer involved, this is going to be really expensive, but
Yeah.
it might save you a lot
Oh yeah.
further down the road.
Yeah,
Like
it's-
like something that you're not thinking of.
Saves a ton, and it's like you want to make sure you go to someone who knows what they're doing. A lot of attorneys out there just slap your name on a printed out will and go from there, and that's fine. Sometimes that's all people need too. Like it kind of runs the gamut, but yeah, it's important to try to avoid probate when you can. I know we were talking mass health stuff and nursing home stuff, but I do feel like it's important we just discuss probate matters and everything like that.
Yeah.
Well, Andrew, thank you very much for your time here this evening.
Oh, thank you for having me.
This has been a blast.
It's been a pleasure.
If you have a question for Andrew, my email address again is on the bottom of the screen right now. Email it to me and I'll get it to him.
Absolutely.
Andrew and I go way back. So, by all means, he's a nice guy. I'm sure he will answer all of your questions.
Of course.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that will wrap it up for us this evening. Again, I'd like to just remind everybody, although I'm an attorney, I'm not your attorney. You're just listening to 2 gentlemen talk about a couple of legal concepts here. Do not take anything here too seriously. Again, even if it seems like we were definitely talking about your issue, trust me, I'm sure there's a subtle variation, and I would love to know about it. So please, if I can help you in any way, please let me know. I or Andrew would be happy to answer all of your questions. Alrighty, folks. Andrew, thank you so much again.
Thank you.
All right, and this has been The Common Law, and we will see you all next time when we discuss another legal issue. Good night.